I was digging through the back of the closet when I stumbled upon something that made my heart race. A familiar, slightly battered box wedged between old storage bins. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw it. It was my long-lost KV-II tank model kit. I had started it years ago, full of ambition and excitement, but somewhere along the way it was forgotten, half-built, and abandoned. Finding the KV-II tank in the back of the closet was like rediscovering hidden treasure, but this wasn't just any model I had left unfinished. This one was special. I had poured so much into it, scratch building every inch, adding custom details, making modifications that took it beyond the simple kit design. I put a lot of time into this turret, adding extra details that weren't included in the kit. I even scratch built a new gun barrel using styrene tubes, and reworked the weld seams with epoxy putty. I also added wire grab handles for more accuracy, but after studying some historical photographs, I realized I had missed so much, so now I'll have to go back and rework it. While inspecting the kit and my work on it, I realized why this project had been abandoned. While attempting to rework the engine vents, I accidentally broke some of the parts. Now I have a minor issue with finishing this kit. I'm missing some pieces. While I can scratch build some, others will have to be sourced. In the past I've contacted Tamiya for missing parts, and they've always been a great company about sending replacements for free. However, since this kit is out of production, they were unable to help this time. Being the great company they are, they suggested using parts from their newer KV-II kit. And you know what? With a few modifications, they will work perfectly. It turned out to be a great solution. While reviewing some walk-around photos of this tank, I noticed many details I had missed during the original build. One such detail was the weld circles that held the armor plates together. To improve accuracy, I'll need to replicate these on my model. On the front of the turret, these welds are covered by another weld seam. To accurately replicate the weld circles, I'll need to remove this area first and then add the correct details underneath. Using my chisel, I will carefully remove this area to prepare it for the modeling of the weld circles accurately. While reviewing the walk-around photos, I kept spotting more details that needed to be added. One such detail was the hooks found around the turret. I scratch built these using styrene and have now attached them. The only thing left to do is to add the welds, yes, more welds, around them for a final touch of accuracy. Russian tanks had a noticeably rougher armor texture compared to other tanks, likely due to the urgency of getting them into battle. In Stalingrad, tanks were rolled straight off the assembly line and sent directly into combat, leaving little time for refinement. This crude texture is an important detail to capture for your models. One way to reproduce this rough armor texture is by mixing Tamiya Basic Type Putty with Mr. Cement S. This combination creates a workable mixture that can be applied to the model to achieve the authentic cast-like texture seen on Russian tanks. I mix it by adding a dollop of putty and then slowly adding just 1 or 2 drops of cement at a time. This method helps conserve valuable modeling supplies. By adding only 1 drop after a few applications, the cement reactivates the putty, allowing for further coverage. This creates a thinner mixture that can be layered to achieve the desired effect, in this case, the rough armor texture, typical of Russian tanks. While working on the armor texture and checking my reference photos, I noticed that the top of the turret also had a textured appearance. Since I already had my tools out, I decided to work on that area as well. Using my method of application, I applied 2 coats to achieve the desired effect, ensuring it matched the rest of the turret. You can see a noticeable difference once that second coat has been applied, as it really enhances the texture and brings it in line with the rest of the turret. Checking my reference photos yet again, I spotted another area that needed weld seams. To tackle this, I reached for my go-to tool for the job, my micro chisel set, to get it done with precision. Okay, while the micro chisel set is normally my go-to tool, older kits often lack detailed weld seams or don't have them at all. In these cases, a Tamiya scriber is the perfect tool to assist the chisel in refining and adding these details in the necessary areas. Once the scriber has done its job, it's time for the chisel set to get to work. Be sure to choose the right size for your model and get to it. However, a word of caution, these chisels have a thin to wide profile and the angles are crucial, especially when working on the upper hull. Weld seams in this area tend to be thinner and more precise due to the thinner armor plates, so careful control is essential. If you keep the chisel too low, you risk the wider part of the tool making the weld seam too broad, resulting in an unrealistic look. Maintaining the correct angle is key to achieving precise and accurate weld details. This is my Ryfield King Tiger build that I have been showing you. I'll have a card above if you want to check out that video. Okay, let's get back to the topic, the KV-II. Notice how I'm keeping the angle controlled in a tight area, using the model part itself as a guide. You'll pick up little tricks like this over time to make the process easier and more precise. That area is now complete and ready for the putty application and weld seam impressions to bring out those fine details. I originally used green stuff when building this kit, but since then I've learned a lot more about creating weld seams. Tamiya Quick Type Putty seems to work best for the job, pun intended. After rolling out a thin putty noodle, this one was rolled even thinner off camera. Carefully pick it up using whatever tool that will work best. To prevent it from sticking to the tool, use a bit of water as a release aid. Always check your reference, or even better, keep a photo nearby. Better yet, use a cell phone for quick access to images to guide you through this step and ensure accuracy. These clay tools are your best friend when it comes to pressing the putty into the seams. They come in various sizes and are incredibly effective. I highly recommend them, and I'll have links in the description to all the tools I use in this video. Now it's time to create the impressions to model our weld seams. For this specific tank, I'm using a simple yet effective tool, a hobby knife with a broken tip, wide enough to fit the seams perfectly. Using my reference once again, I carefully match the details I want for this model, and of course my best friend, the clay tool, is here to help with this step. It's especially useful for pushing the putty back into the seam if it starts to spread too wide or come out of place. So far I'm happy with the results, but since I'm still fairly new to this technique, I'll have to wait and see how well it holds up once the paint and weathering are applied. That's when the real test begins. Since I have some extra putty on hand, and you always seem to end up with too much during this step, I'll use it to create the welds on these hooks that I added earlier in the video. Looking at a reference photo, I'm trying to figure out the best way to replicate these welds. I don't think putty will work for this, so I came up with an idea using small styrene rods, shaving them down, gluing them in place, and then using a hobby knife to shape them into the weld pattern I want. Looking at this reference, I'm trying to figure out how to do this weld. Using a styrene rod once again, I'll glue it to the mantlet and then soften it with some Tamiya extra thin cement. After that, I will use a hobby knife to carefully score along the rod, creating the weld seam detail. As you can see, using styrene can be an effective method for creating weld seams in areas where putty doesn't work as well. It provides more control and precision, especially for finer details. I did end up doing more work on the turret than I intended, but once the paint and weathering are done, every extra effort will be well worth it. That will be in a separate video, as it does take time and patience to finish and release. Be sure not to miss it by subscribing and hitting the bell icon to get notified of this and other uploads from my channel. Now on to the most challenging scratch build parts of this model. Tamiya's early KV kit has these parts incorrectly modeled. For me, scratch building is a process of trial and error. Here I am focusing on getting the angle just right before cutting pieces out of styrene to match it accurately. Now I'm trying to figure out the best way to remove these kit parts without damaging the surrounding areas. I definitely don't want to risk ruining this part and ending up abandoning this model again. Back to the parts I'm trying to make. I figured that drilling some holes in them could serve as a guide for cutting the sections out. The method worked pretty well, but it was very time consuming and difficult to sand everything down evenly to ensure they were all uniform in size. I mean, purchasing the newer $68 Tamiya kit would have saved me a lot of hassle with this build, But hey, misery loves company, right? It's a definite improvement, and I'm happy with the results of them. It was a real pain, but well worth it in the end. Okay, I have been putting this step off for far too long, but I finally decided to just go for it and see what happened. As I began cutting the parts away, I had to be extra careful to keep the lower sections intact, because this left some excess plastic around that area, and that needed to be carefully removed. Misery loves company, right? To do this, I scored from the top and side. Using my hobby knife along with the blade removed from a Tamiya scriber, these tools really helped me to get the job done cleanly and precisely. I began gluing the newly made supports to the model, but then I noticed that there were additional side supports. To fix this, I cut and added styrene pieces to match. I also used the small cut styrene rods to represent bolts. Not perfect, but enough to make it clear to the viewer what they are. I simply added a piece of styrene to fix the missing strut on the engine screen, and then I added some styrene strips to create a frame. Oh, and the screen itself, just a window screen panel I picked up for $1. Perfect budget-friendly solution. It may not be 100% accurate, but it will still look great once finished. After building the frame, I sanded it down, or at least tried to get it as seamless as possible. In the end, I'm happy with how it turned out, and it's definitely an improvement over what was originally there, or what I had actually cut away. Okay, while we're in this section, I wanted to model the lower hatch in an open position, and I knew it needed some improvements. Finding reference photos was tricky since most were facing the wrong way, but then I finally found this one, and it was a huge help. Using it as a guide, I quickly added the necessary details, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I think it came out awesome. Let me know in the comment section what you really think about it. Tamiya just notified me by email that the parts are on their way. That's great, because I've been in limbo with this kit until they arrive. In the meantime, I still need to order some Vuja tracks to complete the build. Until then, I want to thank all of you for watching, and a special thanks to my supporters for subscribing. I will see you in the next video.